Africa's population is increasing rapidly, currently at 1.2 billion, estimated to double by 2050. And with that comes the huge demand for food. And so we need to increase our productivity, we need to improve our animal stock. And so animal biotechnology is very, very important in filling this gap. And with that, new breeding innovations such as genome editing becomes key.
We believe that what could really help Africa to rise and to be really vocal on this domain is, first of all, having a good and understanding regulatory sector which understands the need for African animal biotechnologies and facilitate access to existing technologies and its deployment, and as well access of animal biotechnologies, understanding the need.
Genome editing has a potential to bring that which is classically a GMO or that which is not GMO. So each of our guidelines or regulatory approach have that component of an early consultation where the regulator and the applicant are able to come together and to make a very simple application so that we are able to assess and give advice on the direction that particular component will be regulated.
Brazil is now started with the animals in gene editing, but also now we have more and more plants being subjected to that. And in general, when they don't use technologies that are prevented in the guidelines, these organisms have been considered non-GMO.
The frameworks around gene editing, because we're not adding genes in, we're specifically targeting defects or changes. We're trying to tailor a gene to a particular region, in the case of thermotolerance. So it requires a slightly different approach. So taking a sensible decision tree and asking the questions on whether it requires a safety assessment or not is a good step.
We are now working together with the teams that have been very successful in putting up a regulatory system that is facilitating product development up to commercialization. We are also working with teams that have successfully gotten an approval for product, and they are inspiring the African communities also to come out, especially the private sector, because this was one weak area with crops where we didn't see much of the local private sector companies getting interested and involved in developing products for Africa.
One of those breeds that we're working on is the Holstein, which is the top cow globally for producing milk yield, highest producing milk yield in the world. The problem with the Holstein in the conditions of sub-Saharan Africa is oftentimes when it gets very hot, tropical heat, they suffer from heat stress. The heat stress lowers their ability to produce milk, it reduces their fertility, and it makes it very hard for the farmer to manage their nutrition and their health. And that experience has been consistent across time as many small-scale producers have accessed Holstein genetics.
With the changing climatic conditions, most of the African countries within the sub-Saharan Africa are affected by climate change, leading to harsh climatic conditions which affect the productivity of the animals. With gene editing, we can be able to generate animals that produce more, animals that are more adaptable to these climatic conditions, and animals that are disease resistant to the diseases within these tropics.
We are trying to say this will improve productivity and production, more food and nutrition security, and in a climate change space, it will be safe. So this is going to be something that is really going to push our production to a better level and in a safe environment. We cannot ignore climate change anymore. It is here with us, and we need to push agenda on production and productivity of especially animal resources.
As a continent, we face many challenges when it comes to technology uptake. One of them is precisely, the policy environment. It has been mixed, and again, we learned that from crops, it's so important to carry along our policy makers and to ensure that we are addressing our priority needs, because that way, then the challenges of lack of acceptance or misperceptions is not going to be there. The second one is we are operating in an environment which is already very polluted, so to say, with a lot of misinformation and negative perceptions about biotechnology. And if we don't do things right now with genome editing, then we risk missing out again for animal biotechnology and using genome editing. So we need to ensure we are building the trust that is required to reduce the fears and misperceptions that our public have. The third big challenge is just that lack of private sector involvement. We need to have more of our private sector involved in what our researchers are doing in animal biotechnology, because this is the only way we are also going to build a kitty for supporting our local research.
Part of the challenge for the commercial sector, for the private sector, is uncertainty. So if we haven't got certainty in our markets, and particularly in the regulatory processes, then it's very, very difficult. You want to know that if I come to Kenya and I can get an assessment there, I can go to Nigeria and get a similar assessment following similar framework with the same sort of decision process. But I also then want to be able to go to Ethiopia, and I want to go to Zambia, and I want to be able to ensure that I can get my product to where the need is, where the want is, without being unduly restricted by regulation.
AU-IBA is focused on providing building capacity, especially for African member states in relation to regulations, building capacity in relation to research and development, as well as building capacity for the regional economic communities to be able to drive the agenda of animal biotechnology to the highest level that is possible.
I think meetings like this are good for networking, whereas those countries that are a little bit behind in developing their frameworks can exchange information with those countries that are out on the front edge, trying to build those frameworks and make this technology available not only to larger producers, but all the way down to the smallholder.
So going forward with the animal biotechnology and applying genome editing, the new breeding tools for Africa, one is to ensure that we prioritize the needs, and climate change impacts are really big, and so we need to look at the traits and the animals that are going to be modified so that they can survive in these changing, harsh climatic conditions. Number two, we need to ensure that our stakeholders, the stakeholder actors, the value chain actors in animal biotechnology are fully known. We know those that have high influence, and we have a tool that we use in ISA, the net mapping tool, that helps in identifying the relationships and connections between the different stakeholders within a system. And this is what we are going to use to ensure that we do very accurate and intense stakeholder mapping. Number three, the regulatory space. We need to encourage, nurture, and support our regulators so that they can develop guidelines that are going to be conducive and to facilitate research and transitioning research into products.